Okay, so let's dive right in. What we're talking about today is this really radical idea, one that could genuinely flip our whole understanding of money right on its head. It's a system that promises something huge. We're talking absolute economic stability. Yeah, I know, it sounds pretty bold, right? But seriously, just think about that for a second. No inflation. Ever. No deflation either. What your money buys you today, it buys you the exact same thing tomorrow and the day after that. Guaranteed. That single promise, that's the absolute heart of the concept we're going to break down. So, how in the world would we get to a place like that? Well, here's our route for today. First, we're going to look at the problem, today's sluggish policies. Then, we'll get into the solution, which is a total rethink of what money even is. After that, we'll check out the clever mechanism, an accelerator and a brake that makes it all tick. We'll touch on the tech that can make it happen, and finally, we'll land on that big promise, absolute stability. All right, first things first, let's start at the beginning. Why do we even need to consider a wild new idea for money? Well, it all comes down to a big problem. Our current system is just slow. It's heavy-handed and sluggish. See, our current system, it's almost always reactive. It responds way too late, and when it finally does act, it's like using a sledgehammer. Like with those sudden massive rate hikes that send shockwaves through the economy, hitting some people way harder than others. But this new idea, it's proactive. Think of it more like an autopilot. It's constantly making these tiny, almost unnoticeable adjustments in real time to keep the economy flying straight. And the best part? The burden of those little adjustments is spread out evenly across everyone. Okay, so if that's the problem, what's the solution? What does it actually look like? Well, the core idea is, believe it or not, radically simple. Instead of tying money's value to something like gold or even to debt, this system ties it directly to the real economy. And that right there is the heart of the whole thing. There's always exactly as much money as there are goods and services to buy. No more and no less. And if you can pull that off, the result is that ultimate goal we talked about, absolutely stable purchasing power. So the way it works is the state is constantly measuring the total value of everything, all the goods, all the services, in real time. And then it adjusts the money supply to match that value precisely. A key tool for getting new money out there, by the way, would be something like a universal basic income. That would put it directly into circulation. Now, that sounds great in theory, but how would it actually work in practice? So, if this whole system is constantly adjusting itself, what's the engine that's actually driving it all? Let's get into the nitty-gritty mechanism that's supposed to keep everything perfectly balanced. The key tool here is something called Steuergeld, which basically translates to steering money. Now be careful here, because this isn't money you use to pay your taxes, not at all. It's actually a tool, a mechanism, for regulating both the amount of money out there and how fast it's moving around. It's the thing that keeps the whole economy in equilibrium. You can think of this mechanism as both a gas pedal and a brake for the economy. The gas pedal is something called Schwund, which means decay. A tiny, tiny fraction of money is just deleted. This creates a little incentive for people to spend their money, which stimulates the economy. Then you have the brake. That's called Zuwachs, or growth. Here, a tiny bit of new money is created, which rewards holding on to it, and that gently slows things down. The system can switch between these two, the brake and the gas, depending on exactly what the economy needs in that very moment. But here is where things get really wild. This isn't like a fee that some bank or government collects. No. With Schwund, that money isn't transferred to anyone. It just vanishes. It's literally deleted from the total money supply. Poof, gone. And on the flip side, with Zuwachs, that new money doesn't come from anyone. It's not taken from taxes or anything. It's just created out of thin air. And then it's added to the total supply. To really wrap your head around this, you kind of have to adopt a whole new philosophy of money. And this quote from the source material just sums it up perfectly. We have to abandon the idea that money has a value of its own. In this system, money is just a number in a large ledger. That's it, just a number. A number that can be tweaked up or down, totally pragmatically, all to keep the entire economy stable. Okay, I get it. This all sounds super theoretical, right? You're probably sitting there wondering, how on earth could you actually implement a system like this in the real world? Well, the technology that's been proposed to power it is actually pretty fascinating. The whole idea really rests on four main pillars. First, it's a hybrid currency. It's mainly digital, sure, but it would also have physical smart banknotes. Just try to picture this, a banknote with a chip and a little e-ink display that could actually show its changing value. Second, you've got anonymized transparency. That means all the cash flows are recorded, but they're anonymous, so you get transparency without turning into a surveillance state. Third, the whole thing's run by a real-time algorithm making all those tiny, constant adjustments. But, and this is a really key point, the algorithm isn't just left to run wild. It would be constantly monitored and fine-tuned by human experts. Okay, so we have a pretty good idea now of how this is all supposed to work. But why? What's the point of all this complexity? Let's get to the bottom line, the grand promise that's driving this entire system. So what is that grand promise? What's the ultimate goal of all this innovation? It's actually crystal clear. It's a system designed from the ground up for one thing: absolute stability and total protection from financial crises. And that leaves us with the big question, doesn't it? Is this a brilliant vision for a future that's finally free from financial chaos? Or is it a risky, maybe even unachievable utopia? The answer to that question, well, it could define the future of money as we know it.